You're driving down a dark road. A shape darts into your headlights. Before your brain can register it, your hands have jerked the wheel. You swerved. You didn't weigh the cost of your tires or the legal liability of a crash. Your body acted to protect life before your mind had a chance to speak. Does the impulse to help arrive before the reasoning about whether to help? When we act instantly, we usually protect. But when we are given time to pause and think, things go wrong. Deliberation gives us the space to talk ourselves out of our empathy, or worse, to talk ourselves into cruelty. In that pause, we consult an invisible ledger. We calculate legal risk, social standing, or whether helping violates a religious rule. The natural conscience stops, waiting for permission from a code. The greatest atrocities in human history are rarely the result of a missing moral compass. They happen because we are taught to suppress our immediate native instincts in favor of a calculated delay. Zoom out from the individual, and you see this exact same delay operating on a global scale. Entire nations use complex deliberation to build massive military budgets and fund systemic balance, burying the instinct to preserve life under layers of strategic logic. This process is called rationalization. It's an intellectual tool designed to disguise destructive actions as logical necessities. Look at Guatemala in 1954. A manufactured political narrative about a foreign threat successfully overrode human empathy. People were mobilized to support a conflict because they were given a logical, structural reason to ignore the human cost. This scale of justified violence is not natural. It is a conditioned, learned response. It requires active effort to push past our baseline biology. To dismantle these systemic crises, we have to trace exactly when and how our natural moral reflexes were hijacked, codified, and slowed down. This brings us to Consciencology. It is the specific study of conscience as an innate human capacity that can be cultivated, completely separate from external conditioning. The founding hypothesis is that the protective moral impulse is a precognitive reflex. It fires fast, within an emblematic window of 1/60th of a second, before conscious deliberation. This tracks a bodily response. The viscera react instantly, bypassing the intellect completely. Ancient thinkers documented this mechanism long before modern science. The philosopher Mencius noted that anyone who suddenly sees a child about to fall into a well instantly feels alarm and compassion. The reaction happens in the body, completely bypassing any calculation of reputation or reward. 3 centuries later, the Nazarene told the parable of the Good Samaritan. The priest and the Levite consult their religious codes and walk past the injured man. The Samaritan acts, and the original Greek text describes his reaction using a specific word, esplagniste, meaning he was moved in his gut. These two disconnected traditions reach the exact same conclusion. True morality is a biological mechanism operating inside the body, not an external mental ledger. But history took a detour. We entered a period we can call the outward settlement. This is the specific point where Western civilization stopped trusting its internal compass. Greek systematizers began this shift. Plato moved moral truth entirely outside the human body, placing it into an abstract celestial world of forms that required deep intellectual labor to access. Later institutional theologians formalized this. They locked moral truth to external rulebooks and strict divine commandments, cementing the idea that authority lives outside the person. By moving truth outward, this system introduced heavy conditions. Doing the right thing became a calculation based on the fear of punishment or the desire for heavenly rewards. If a human has to pause, consult a code, or compute a liability before helping someone else, their biological empathy is paralyzed. Rule following replaces immediate compassion. The outward settlement successfully traded the immediate velocity of human empathy for a slow, easily manipulated system of outward obedience. Once we rely on external logic rather than internal reflex, our conscience becomes vulnerable. In the modern era, propagandists realized they could manufacture consent by feeding us logical reasons to ignore our empathy. Look at early public relations campaigns. They successfully took harmful behaviors and reframed them as assertions of independence. They hijacked our rational minds to bypass our biological well-being. This animated chart directly measures that manipulation using a metric called conscience efficiency. It compares a massive scale representing destructive military expenditures directly against a minuscule scale for educational investments. A wide gap between these two figures provides a baseline for evaluating conscience efficiency. It highlights exactly where a society diverts resources away from the active cultivation and protection of life. Now apply this failure to the future of artificial intelligence. If we build AI systems based solely on our flawed, externalized rulebooks, we will replicate the paralysis of human rationalization on a massive digital scale. The countermeasure is what we call wisdom intelligence, or AIWI. This framework requires AI systems to prioritize the physiological cues of human conscience as a primary operational constraint. This digital guardrail is modeled on the Faradinha, the profound split-second pause where native human empathy steps in to override rigid programming. To get there, true moral education doesn't mean learning more rules. It means unlearning centuries of external laws so we can polish the mirror of the mind back to its natural state. You don't need a code to know how to protect life. Strip away the artificial conditioning, trust your instinct, and react to the world with the native, unfiltered velocity of your own humanity.